Welcome back to the Development Book Club. Today we continue with Facing Love Addiction, and we'll cover the mini chapters which compose part 2, the recovery process. Let's begin when we talk about what to do about your co-addictive relationship. Pia notes that going through the recovery process is difficult and rather miserable experience to begin this section. And most people who are sick of living this self-defeating way can do what it takes to recover. There are 4 phases of recovery. Number 1 is to address any apparent addictive processes outside of the relationship. So if you have a drinking problem or gambling problem or whatever, address that first. Number 2, disengage from the addictive parts of the relationship process with you're in. Number 3 is to enter therapy if necessary to work on old childhood feelings of abandonment and or enmeshment. Number 4, work on the underlying symptoms of codependence, which we covered in the previous book. P.S., she says, stay out of new relationships until you have moved through these 4 stages. Chapter 8, putting the old relationship on hold. So this would be like step 2 that I just talked about, disengage from the addictive parts of the relationship process. In co-addictive relationships, each partner should address their own addiction and codependency separately. This way they can learn to set boundaries and work on their own self-esteem. The partners don't have to get separated or divorce. They should eliminate any contact that leads to fighting, however. Fighting, intensity, painful feelings, or trying to deal with the issues of their co-addictive relationship, which might be almost any contact. We talk about fighting and intensity and painful emotions. After disengaging from these aspects, there will be a lot of quietness in the relationship, P.S. says. And this quiet will be uncomfortable due to the habitual ebb and flow of toxic intensity that characterizes co-addictive relationships. The love addict will be tempted to do what Pia refers to as bomb the relationship, to bomb their partner, to start that process back up that they're so used to. So there's 2 types. There's an anger bomb, she says, which is picking a fight so that the avoidant will emotionally connect even though it's negative with you. So start a fight. Seduction bomb is either the addict displaying helplessness or being sexually provocative in order to re-engage that cycle by different means. Mature relationships, she says, can have long episodes of silence in them. They are not based on creating intensity, but on having safety and serenity. The love avoidant, for their part, they will probably feel relief with the quietness of the relationship. Eventually, their own abandonment issues will surface, and they will also be tempted to lob bombs. A cool idea that she mentions is for each partner to list the ways that they can think that they do bomb each other, to be more aware of it. And then when the urge to do this arises, she says, shh, close your mouth and breathe. Develop a wall of pleasant silence. Chapter 10 is about treating the symptoms of codependence. There are 2 distinct processes of recovery that need to be kept separate, she says. Recovery from codependent symptoms and then the toxic effects of how you were treated as a child being the cause. So there's symptom and cause that both need to be addressed separately though. Chapter 11, we talk about entering or re-entering a relationship. In recovery, 2 things are requested in relationships: intimacy and support. These need to be verbal, direct, and clear to the partner. So for example, intimacy, request for intimacy, sharing and receiving reality without judgment is how she defines intimacy. This is done in 3 ways: with the body, thoughts, and feelings. So this can sound properly like with the body, for example. Would you be willing to hold my hand and or give me a hug? Would you be willing to be sexual with me tonight? Would be another one for the body. Obviously, I need to talk to you about this. Would you be willing to talk about this with me? Would be the thoughts. And then would you be willing to listen while I share some feelings about what just happened? Feelings. Would you be willing is the key little phrase there. Asking for support, on the other hand, is asking your partner to help meet a need or want. It can be physical or emotional. Would you be willing to look at my finger and try to remove this splinter? Would you be willing to go with me to see my son graduate? I want emotional support from you while I'm around my ex-husband, all this, and his family. After making the request. So there's always ways to make requests, right? Not demands, but requests. And requests, will revert from nonviolent communication, can be declined with no consequence. After making the request, a few things. Number 1, show up, be there physically. Pay attention using active listening. Tell the truth. Ask for what you need and want. Let go of attachment to the outcome. So this, no matter whatever the response is is what my partner's response is today. Isn't that interesting? And she keeps returning to this, isn't that interesting? And this, since we're taking a break from Buddhism, this sort of goes back to different ways of mindfulness. Oh, interesting. Saying it inside, of course, because it could be seen as passive aggressive if it's spoken to somebody. Celebrate your partner's no. Like, take it as an opportunity to get better. And note what you get to keep an accurate account of like yeses and nos. So like, is this person always just say no to me? Is that a good relationship I want to be in? How to respond to your partners now as receiving requests for intimacy and rapport. Say yes when responding is not too great a cost of you, and say no when the cost will be too great. So simple. Guidelines for being in a relationship is the last thing we're going to talk about here before we transition in the next video to being in a healthy relationship. I don't like these because I prefer a positive message. I'll read them as she writes them. Don't assign blame when you're in a conflict. So the idea here would be like facts and feelings only, not judgments. No keeping score, even though she just said to sort of keep track, but don't bring it up unless you're in a relationship. Don't argue perceptions and facts, accept the reality. This is a weird one for me, but that's what she says. Don't threaten abandonment in the face of conflict. If you must leave a situation, give a time for your return. Don't just take off. Communicate in 4 sentences or less. So avoid justifying and explaining yourself too much. This is not good. Don't worry about whether your partner uses these guidelines. And begin with a friend in a non-sexual relationship. So if we can go back with those guidelines for being in a relationship, we have to state them positively, which is to say what you should do, not what you shouldn't do. Don't assign blame. So let's say talk about facts, feelings, and needs only. This is nonviolent communication. Accept their perception of the situation. If you must leave, give them a time that you will return and be able to continue. Communicate in 4 sentences or less. I love this one. Avoid justifying and explaining yourself too much. So stick with the facts, feelings, and needs. And use the guidelines yourself. They don't need to do it. Just like nonviolent communication, it works when only one person does it. And begin with a friend in a non-sexual sense. There can be like intimate kissing, but she gives some cool tips for finding new friends and stuff to get yourself back into any kind of relationships in a healthy way. Thank you for watching.